This is a lesson video on the topic of food safety. Now, the lesson objective for food safety, according to the syllabus, is to state how to avoid and reduce the risk of food spoilage and contamination when preparing, cooking, and storing of food. Okay, so that includes hygiene practices. So this topic is not just for exam purposes, but also for your practical lessons awareness. Now the question becomes why food safety is important and what are the factors that affects food safety. Now to address the first questions, okay, it is important because you need to prevent the contamination of bacteria to food in order to prevent yourself from food poisoning. Now the various symptoms of food poisoning includes nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps where you have stomach ache, and you have diarrhea for more than 3 days. So what are the factors that affects food safety? Basically, food spoilage, environmental factors, which we'll be doing a deep dive later, the hygiene practices in your food preparation, serving, and storage, and your kitchen hygiene practices. Now, all these factors can affect the safety of the food. Now, in terms of food spoilage, this occurs when there is undesirable changes in your food, okay, where your food is contaminated and are unsafe to eat. Okay, these undesirable changes can affect the nutritive value, color, flavor, and even the texture of the food. However, certain instances, it may still be safe to eat. For example, stale bread, when it's passed by the use-by date, if it's not moldy, you can still eat the stale bread, right? Cut fruits, which are left in the open for a certain period of time, like 10-20 minutes, which you may notice that it may turn brown, okay? But that is still safe to eat. It's just not pleasing to the eye, okay? But it's still safe to eat. And eating contamination food can lead to food poisoning because you're ingesting either bacteria or toxins that is produced by the bacteria. Okay, so it will lead to food poisoning. And the microbial spoilage is caused by microorganisms that can be mold, yeast, or bacteria. And if it's not stored or handled properly, this is an excellent media for microbial growth. Okay, and as mentioned, these are the types of microorganisms that cause food spoilage. Now, in terms of mold, you may be very familiar with bread mold, and these are multicellular organisms, okay, and they may appear on certain food products that will have that white or greenish appearance. And you need very little moisture to survive. That's why food such as bread, grains are candidates for mold to grow. And they thrive in temperature such as 25 to 30 degrees. For most, and they reproduce in large numbers and they are airborne. Okay, one of the things that is concerning is that the toxins that they produce is heat resistance, and therefore it's very difficult to get rid of it once the food turns moldy, okay, because the mycotoxins is heat resistance, and it can lead to severe health issues such as failure of your liver and kidneys. So once the food is moldy, you need to dispose it immediately. Okay, there's no way that you can salvage the food back. Okay, the next one is your yeast. They are single-cell organisms that survive in moist condition, and they like food with high sugar concentration and low pH. So candidates like your jam, fruit juice, honey, they are very good places where yeast can grow. So they appear in slimy patches of the food itself, and they do not consume, and this will cause either allergic reactions or food poisoning to occur. The last type of microbial spoilage is something that everyone is very familiar of. It's caused by bacteria, and they are single cell organisms that is much smaller than yeast and mold, and they grow best in moist conditions and neutral pH. And the raw foods are easily contaminated by bacteria during harvesting, storing, and even preparing. Okay, pathogenic bacteria. These are bacteria that can cause food poisoning. Okay, so there are certain species of Salmonella that is commonly found in contaminated eggs and raw chickens. Okay, Salmonella. Please don't confuse Salmonella with salmon. Okay, they are two different organisms. Okay? Species of Vibrio, which is found in uncooked seafood. E. coli can be found in raw beef and lambs. Pathogenic bacteria can be normally found in undercooked or contaminated food. Okay, especially when they are mishandled. All right, such as if you don't wear gloves or you don't wash your hands after you visited the toilet and then you start to prepare your food. Okay, these are ways that food is being mishandled. For chemical spoilage, such as fat turning rancid, okay, basically is developing that undesirable smell. Okay, because fat has undergone chemical reactions in the presence of oxygen, heat, and light. Okay, so they break down into glycerol and fatty acids, producing that off odor that is unpleasant. Okay, and food that are prone to rancidity are food that contains a high level of oil, such as your nuts, potato chips, or even whole grains. Okay, physical spoilage refers to damage during harvesting, handling, or the distribution. Okay, this includes your fruit experiencing bruising, broken skin, okay, that is caused by insects or rodents. Rodents refers to rats, all right, or mouse, okay, that bite your fruits and vegetables. Weevils and other pests that can be found in grains, rice, or flour. Okay, right, and your pests such as your cockroach, house flies, etc. Right, they contaminate their food with their waste that they produce. Okay, and other parts of their bodies. Okay, environmental factors such as light. Okay, where light from the sun can destroy sensitive vitamins such as A and C. Okay, and oxygen that promotes the growth of bacteria or microorganisms. Warm temperature, right, will increase the chemical reactions of browning and rancidity. And microorganisms grow faster at warm temperature. So it is, for example, it's not advisable to store your raw meat at room temperature because it spoils much faster than the meat that is stored in chiller. Definitely for microorganisms, they prefer a moist condition, very similar to humans where you need water, right? An acidic environment. This encourage the growth of yeast in fruit juices. Okay, but at the same time, acidic environment helps to prevent bacterial growth. right? Because bacteria do not like acidic environment where the pH are very low, right? Right, we now move on to handling of food. Okay, firstly, personal good hygienes. Right, the first one is wash your hands with soap and water. Okay, definitely this one this one self-explanatory. You need to wear clean clothes and appropriate protective equipment. So therefore, when you come for your practical, you need to wear your white apron. That is proper equipment. Okay. Tie your hair if your hair is too long, and pin up the fringes so that the hair will not fall into your food. Keep your nails short so that dirt will not accumulate in your nails. And if you have open wounds, do cover it with a clean plaster. Right. Some of the ways to avoid cross-contamination, okay, includes not mixing your cooked food with raw food, okay, through the use of cooking board. So the utensils that is used to process raw food should be separated from utensils that is used to process cooked food, so that you won't encounter cross-contamination, right? Okay, so that's what I meant. Separate your utensils such as your chopping boards and knives. So generally, students tend to confuse in the exams personal hygiene with cross-contaminations points. So you need to have a clear understanding. Personal hygienes are things or actions that you do to yourself. Okay, such as wash your hands, wear clean clothes, short hair, short nails. Okay, but cross-contamination of the bacteria is separate raw food and cooked food by using different sets of utensils. Okay, so you got to be able to differentiate. Maintain food safety in thaw food. Thaw food simply means the removal of ice in the food. Okay, so thaw food should not be refrozen because once thaw food has already been thawed, okay, it has the bacteria will continue to grow. Okay, so it should not be refrozen because you already start to grow the microorganisms. So frozen food should be thawed by the following methods. Okay, either you place it at the lowest shelf of the chiller, where you thaw the food slowly, but in a safe manner, or if you want to have a quick way, you can thaw small amount of food in a microwave. Okay, set it to defrost mode. Now, this diagram shows the what happens during the thawing process. Okay, where you can see that food cells before freezing, you can see that it's quite intact, no damage. Okay, these are individual cells. So food cells during flash freezing, okay, you can see that small crystals, ice crystals begin to form inside the cells. Okay, but they would not damage so extensively for the entire cells. Okay, but food cells during regular freezing, okay, as you can see over here, large crystals is formed, and because the large crystal would be able to puncture the cells, it causes a lot of cell damage. Okay, so that is the thing that you need to know about thawing of food. First in, first out principle. Use the fresh food that was bought at a later date, at an earlier date. Okay. Use the convenience food that has an earlier expiry date. Basically, using food that expire that is closer to the expiry date. All right. So during cooking, ensure that your internal food is maintained at 75 degrees, right? And also keep out of the danger zone, which is 5 to 60 degrees. All right. So this is 60, 5 to 60 degrees. And the cooked food should not be left in the room temperature for more than 4 hours. Because once you cross the 4-hour mark, the amount of bacteria that can cause food poisoning is very likely to get you into an episode of food poisoning. So you should consume your food within 4 hours. Now, in terms of storing of food, okay, we have the perishable food and non-perishable food. Okay, before we talk about storing of food, let's differentiate between perishable and non-perishable. So perishables are your food that goes turns bad pretty quickly because they have a high moisture. Definitely, you need to keep it in the refrigerator. Okay? Conversely, for non-perishable, it has a low moisture. Generally, it's quite drier, and it can be stored in a room temperature, and it does not spoil so quickly. Okay, generally it lasts much longer than perishable. So in terms of perishable, some of the examples can be your fresh food like your seafood, meat and poultry, all these cooked food, frozen food, fruits and vegetables. For, let's see, non-perishable are your dry food such as your cereal, biscuit, dry fruits, nuts, etc. Okay, and they can be stored in room temperature, but do take note, store away from sunlight because some of the food contains fats, and this will lead to rancidity if they are stored directly in sunlight. Now, the parts of the fridge are as follows. You mainly have the freezer that store your ice cream, seafood, and meat. Okay, your chiller, which is the bottom compartment over here. Okay, these are your cooked food, eggs, dairy products. Okay, crisper, okay, is this bottom shelf over here. Now, crisper here stores specifically your fruits and vegetables. Okay, this is a special compartment where where the fridge is able to adjust the humidity, which is the amount of moisture in the fridge itself. Okay, so it is most suitable for storing fruits and vegetables. Now, during the exams, you need to know the different parts of the fridge and what kind of food is suitable to be stored in. Okay, general guidelines when storing of food. Okay, general guidelines. Store food with an earlier expiry date at the front of the shelf. Okay, this is in line with the first in, first out principle. The temperature of the chiller should maintain at 0 to 4 degrees. That is away from the danger zone of 5 to 60 degrees. The temperature of the freezer should be 18 degrees and below, okay, which is much lower than your chiller temperature. Okay, because you want all the water to be frozen. So that's why minus 18. The ways to store cooked food. Okay, generally it has to be cooled down before you store it so that you won't affect the overall temperature of the refrigerator. And don't store food while the food is still warm, okay, because it will increase the temperature of the fridge itself. And cover it with airtight containers to prevent cross-contaminations. Okay, you don't want bacteria to be transferred from one food to another. So always cover it with airtight container. In storing of raw meat and poultry, okay, you should keep it in airtight containers, okay, and place it below cooked food. Okay, because you do not want the juices of this food to drip into the food itself. So you want to store it below the cooked food. And it should be at the lower shelf of the chiller so that it will not potentially drip to the cooked food. Okay, if you want to consume it much later, do store it in the freezer. But if you want to consume it within the same day, you can put it in the chiller. The large cut of the meat, if you have large amount of meat, it should be cut into smaller pieces before freezing. Okay, so that you can pour the necessary amount before cooking. Okay? And you should only thaw the amount of food that is required for cooking so that you can avoid refreezing. Okay, because refreezing will cause food spoilage. Now, ways to store dairy products. Okay, it should be kept at the chiller. Okay, try not to keep in the door of the fridge. Okay, unopened ultra UHT milk. UHT milk refers to a type of milk that is ultra heat treatment. It can be stored in the room temperature, but once you open it, you must put it in the chiller itself. Okay. Dairy products, okay, such as your cream, yogurt, should be stored in the chiller. In terms of storage of eggs, okay, generally you can store eggs at room temperature if you are going to use it within a few days, no problem. But if you want to prolong the shelf life, you should store it in the chiller itself. Okay, so that's for eggs. Definitely do not wash the eggs because it will destroy the protective layers of the eggs. You should only wash the eggs. You should only wash the eggs before you use it, not during storage. Now, in terms of storage of fruits and vegetables, you should remove the wilted leaves from the leafy vegetables. Wrap it in paper towels to absorb moisture. You should want to keep it as dry as possible so that it will not wilt too quickly. And store them in the crisper compartment. Okay. The common mistake that students make for this is that you tend to answer it like store fruits and vegetables in the chiller compartment. It's the crisper. Okay. We are quite strict about it. So please remember crisper compartment. In terms of storing roots, tubers, bulbs, vegetables, and bananas, all these we will have dedicated chapters on it. Okay, but generally speaking, these roots and tubers, okay, you can store it at room temperature, okay, where it is dry and away from sunlight. Okay, so you do not need to store in the refrigerator. Certain tropical fruits like your bananas should store at room temperature because they will turn black if it is refrigerated. Okay, because it should not be stored at that temperature. Kitchen hygiene practices. Okay. Wash your utensils immediately after use and do not leave it overnight because you will attract cockroaches, which you don't want. Okay, and store it in the appropriate shelves and cupboard. Okay. For other kitchen hygiene, wash and disinfect dishcloth and tea towel regularly. Okay, because you want this cloth, you do not want this cloth to be a place where you have bacteria growing. Keep the sink, stove, and preparation area clean and disinfected regularly. Okay, because generally we find that certain times the student forgot to clean the stove, and this leads to ants infestations for the next class. So when you are doing your practical, do remember to clean the tabletops, stove, so that you will eliminate the ants infestations of the cookery room. Replace your cleaning sponge regularly. Okay. Other kitchen practices, avoid throwing the food into the sink. Okay, we have a strainer in the sink that catches the food debris that we need you to clear it before the practical ends. Line your trash bins with plastic bag, okay, and tie them tightly before disposing. Or don't just throw the plastic bag at the end of the day. Empty the rubbish bin at the end of the day when your practical ends, and to squeeze dry the sponge at the end of the practical. And that's all for this topic of food hygiene. Thank you very much.